Hello everyone, welcome to the third class on interview current affairs. The last two classes we discussed on globalization, how it is impacting world order. Then last class when we discussed about China, we have seen some aspects of consequences of Chinese one-child policy. In this class we will discuss in detail, does India also need a stringent coercive population control policy like that of China? Let's get started. So why this discussion, why this topic is important is, it's always for one or other reason, for support or against, it's always in news. In recent times, Prime Minister's 2009 Independence Day speech from the Red Fort highlighted the need for checking population explosion. Last year, UP government has came up with a very stringent bill to control the population. It clearly differentiated certain kind of penalties for having more children, like cutting off the opportunity to get government job or cutting off from the subsidies including rations. And recently the ongoing parliament session, the MP has introduced a private members bill on population control. So one or other reason, this population need for a stringent population control measure is always in news. And this kind of question, the challenge you will face is, there is arguments on both sides. Whether you are support or against, there is very strong arguments on either side of it. And you should take either one side. You cannot give it like a mains by writing some pros, writing cons and taking a no stance. There is no such option if you are doing for interview. So what we will do today is we will see what are the major arguments in support of needing a policy, stringent population control policy, and what are the counter arguments. Let's see. So if you look at the India's population, it's already more than 1.4 billion, 141 crore, and it is crossing. According to World Bank report, by 2023 itself, that is the next year, before you may be joining the services itself, India may cross Chinese population and become the most populous country in the world. Now every second 4.3 babies are born in India. By the time we complete this session, more than 5,000 babies will be born. It's not just India is the most populous country, our population is still growing. It still has not reached the civilization phase. If we have such a huge population, there can be some level of consequences, one way or the other. Very rightly pointed out by our ex-Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh. India happens to be a rich country inhabited by poor people. If you look at India's GDP, nominal GDP terms, India is the 5th largest economy in the world. You'll be amazed by the contrast if you look at the same ranking for GDP per capita, nominal GDP per capita terms. India's rank come at 144, 5th versus 144. When is India going to catch up this? India's per capita GDP is 40% less than the global average. So one major reason was the highly increasing population. Whatever problems you see in the world today, food security, whether it be food security, economic issues like migration issues, slum, development of slum, population, pollution of Ganga, one way or the other, everything this is revolving around huge population or uncontrolled population. So on one side, India's population is increasing. On the other side, it is creating so much pressure on the resources, creating so much social, economic, environmental and other issues. If this is not enough, we are currently moving into a phase of automation and IR4 for Industrial Revolution 4.0. If you go by the words of Elon Musk, we are moving or already moved into a world phase where there is no way we can give jobs to the 5 billion people. Maybe out of 8 billion, 5 billion is working. There is no way world or economic system of the future can sustain a profitable or livable job to 5 billion people. Even in India, we have this population, more than 5 million are joining our workforce every year. And on the contrast, there are reports citing 70% of today's jobs in India are being threatened by automation and industrial revolution. So what is the point of having or letting the population increase again if this is the context? Let's see some other arguments also. Yeah, these are more or less specifically related to India. Yeah, so two-child norm or some kind of policy control measures, this is not totally new. One way or the other, India is already going into this cycle. Many states, like many major states, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Maharashtra, all these states has one time or the other time has implemented some kind of a two-child norm in panchayat elections, in municipality elections. So why is there so much opposition when we are speaking about having a national law, when such a law is already existing, or some states have withdrawn this but still existing in many states? This is one side of the argument. Secondly, they recently introduced a bill in the parliament. It states totally another kind of argument. If you look at India, if you look at the map of India, we can see a stark divide in the fertility rate. States which are above the northern states, which you say, UP is having a fertility rate of 2.4, Bihar having a fertility rate of 3, Jharkhand 2.3. So these states which are in this belt, these are states with already huge population. If UP were a country of its own, it might have been the 5th most populous country in the world. So this states already huge population and their fertility rate is also too high. And what about the states in the lower side or southern side? Kerala is having a fertility rate of 1.5, Karnataka 1.7. So these states are having small population and their population is already going to shrink in the near future. So what is the consequence of this? It's going to result in so much political and other struggle. Why this happened is states government are left with themselves to decide how to do the population control measures. Had there been a national law, we might have managed the disbalance much better. Is this a reason for having a national population control measure? Let's go ahead and see what are the counter arguments. Yeah. So what we have seen till now is India's population is growing. This is creating huge pressure on resources, economy, environment, everywhere. On the other hand, the world itself is moving towards a phase where there cannot be an option of giving job to all people due to automation, industrial revolution. And there are certain arguments from Indian specific perspective for needing a national level population control. Now see what are the counter arguments to this. As you can see, what is this? Demographic dividend of many countries. Whichever country has recently came out of the middle income trap, you can follow it. Korea, Japan, even China, even though it is not out of middle income trap, all these countries' huge growth phase is very much in line with its phase of demographic dividend. So population, even though India has huge population, even though India's population is growing, India is also going through a phase of huge demographic dividend. From 2018 to 2055 or 2061 to some other reports. So when India is going through a phase of demographic dividend, can we call this population as a burden or liability? This is of course an asset. For example, you can take where the Indian GDP is coming from, GDP growth. 60% of India's GDP is private consumption. Where this private consumption is coming? From the middle class, due to huge middle class India is having. Why all global brands, Apple, Chinese brand like Xiaomi, Starbucks, everyone want to come to India because we have huge market. And where this market is, it is due to India's huge population. So from all this perspective, India's population cannot be considered as a liability as its own. Now, to give more support to the argument, let's see what happened to China, which a country has gone through the path of very stringent population control policy. From 90s, it has implemented the one-child policy. Now, the consequences has been disastrous. Even though China claimed to have averted 400 million births, this is not enough. What Chinese economy today is facing, the root cause of it is having shrinking workforce and having an aging population. We have seen in last class also, Chinese average population is 38 compared to that of 28 in India. So Chinese economy, even though they are trying to move to 3-child policy from 1-child policy, it's still having very difficult. If this is not, economic consequences are not enough, there are social consequences like female foeticide, infanticide, abandoning of girl children. India itself is a country with huge amount of patriarchy. There is huge meta-son preference. So in this country, all these consequences which China faced are going to come back very more strongly if this is implemented in India. There are 63 million more men in China than women. This is all related to the negative impacts or negative consequences of the stringent population control policy. So should India also, why should India go in through that path? Let's see some other dimensions. What India's approach to population were till now, population control. India followed a very conservative approach, or very based on awareness. Family planning control program of 1952 started very early. Introduction of modern contraceptives, making people different modern technologies available to the people. Campaigns like Hum Do Hamara Do. So far India has followed a very awareness building approach to population control, compared to very contrasting that is compared to that of China. Still, when you look at the result, India's total fertility has seen a steep drop from 6 in 1960s to 2 in 2020. You can see the graph, map of India. How many states are having huge total fertility rate? Only 4 states, UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, Assam. Not Assam, Meghalaya. All other states are one way or the other having fertility rate much less than 2. 1.8 in Kerala, 1.7 in Karnataka. So in this context, what is need for a very stringent nationwide population control measures? Indian population is already going to stabilize sooner. Indian population is always going to come down by the end of this century. In this context, what is the need for a very stringent population control measure? These arguments are not enough. Is a stringent population control measure in line with the constitutional ideas or constitutionalism? Is having a very stringent population policy or not giving somebody the job, government job, access to government job because he has more number of children, is in line with the right to equality under Article 16? We had a recent Supreme Court judgment on abortions. Supreme Court has said that any woman, irrespective of her marital status, should have right to abortions. So one way or the other, our constitution, legal system, constitution, all these ideas are moving towards bodily autonomy, moving towards individualism. In this context, state coming into picture and telling people what number of children XYZ should have, is this a violation of Article 21? So what you can see is there is very strong arguments in support and against the having a very stringent or coercive population control measure. Instead of taking a stance, I leave it to you to take a stand. Do comment in the comment box what is your opinion on, does India need a stringent one child policy like that of China? That's all for today. Thank you.